Hi, I'm Denise Brown, and you're watching All Things Considered here on TV5.
Hi, I'm Jamie Sekeris, host here on All Things Considered. Tonight, we will be focusing on an issue that affects everyone, that is domestic violence. We will be talking with the director of the SAFE organization here in Clarion, as well as our exclusive interview with Denise Brown, sister of Nicole Brown Simpson, when All Things Considered returns.
Recommend getting your heart traveled on to anyone.
We had the opportunity to speak with Denise Brown, sister of Nicole Brown Simpson, on her sister's abuse and her feelings on the issue. Producer Mike Markowinski and myself sat down with Denise for this exclusive interview.
Why did you come to Clarion?
Basically, when it boils right down to it, I travel around the country and I just try to get my message all across the country, you know, pretty much all across the world, and that's to stop domestic violence.
How did you find out about your Nicole's abuse?
Actually, it was after her death. We found her notes in her diaries after she was murdered, and that was probably about 2-3 months afterwards. And it was a shock to me because the things that I was reading, I was privy to a lot of the situations, like the one I did testify to at the trial, that I did testify to. And you know, you learn about things like this, and if you don't know what the cycle of domestic violence is, you don't really know that this is domestic violence because you think that it's an isolated incident. And reading her diaries and finding out what had happened after the fact in certain places that we had been, I mean, it was a shock to me. And then what I did is I went to a shelter in Laguna Beach, California, and I asked them for help. I said, what is this all about? And I said, you know, I don't understand this. They gave me fact sheets, they gave me books. And then I started educating myself about domestic violence.
To some shelters that helped you find out more about domestic violence, and you took it upon yourself to do that, basically?
Yeah, the first shelter I went to, which is Human Options, I went there at the beginning. I said, listen, guys, I said, I've got this. What is this all about? Why would, you know, I asked all the same questions. Yeah. It's like, why did she stay? Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she talk to me? Why didn't she come to me? I gave her all the opportunities to come to me. And I didn't understand it until I started reading the fact sheets and reading all the books that they gave me. And then I started understanding, okay, there's a whole cycle of violence here. There's a whole cycle of one person needing to control another person. There's the verbal, the emotional, the psychological abuse. The put-downs, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless. And you know what? If you're told you're stupid over and over again, you can start believing it, you know, that you're no good, and then nobody else is going to want you, and, you know, those kind of put-downs, and that escalates into the physical violence. And that is what everybody knows about, you know, the hitting, the kicking, and the punching, throwing up against walls and stuff. So, and that, you know, if a victim's lucky enough to survive, what happens is that there's the honeymoon phase, and that's the, oh, baby, it's never going to happen again. The I'm sorry's, the excuses, the gifts, the flowers. And that's the cycle of violence that I knew nothing about, because what happens after the honeymoon phase, after, you know, this I'm sorry's, oh, it's never going to happen again, and all the excuses, what happens is that there's a real nice period there for a while. And then all of a sudden the tension starts again with the verbal put-downs, with the, you know, you're stupid, why are you wearing that? There's, this is all the stuff that I'm going to speak about tonight. It's what you hear from the victims in the shelters are walking on eggshells. It's one expression. And what happens is that if you're, for instance, your hair, if your guy walks into the door and says, why do you have your hair like that? You know, it could send him into a rage. Why are you wearing that colored lipstick? Why aren't you wearing a dress? What's wrong with you? You know, just the tiniest things, because you never know what's going to trigger them, because they're very, very charming usually. You know, and I talk about percentages on how, you know, there are women abusers as well. I mean, I've been to prisons where I've met women, I've spoken to women who are in prison for killing their abusers, and they've also come up to me afterwards. It's like, where do I go after I get out of here? What do I do after I go out of here? There's no place for me to go. And you know what they have to do is they have to start having batterers programs for women as well. You know, so that they're allowed to go, because there are abusive women and they realize it and they need to have a place to go to so that they can educate themselves as well.
Okay. Let me ask you, while we're on the issue of domestic violence, the first program which I'm aware of is the Crusade Against Family, or the Crusade Against Families Against Domestic Violence. What is this program and how did it get its start?
You know, I'm not really sure the name of that, but where that whole program started, but that particular name, I usually call it a neighborhood watch program. And what it does is, it's a couple of women that started it out in California, in Modesto, California. They knew that they had domestic violence in their neighborhood. They wanted to do something about it because they could hear it. So what they did is they asked their local police department, what, you know, does domestic violence exist in our neighborhood watch program? And they said no. So what they did is they started talking and talking and talking, and pretty soon they talked, you know, they just kept talking, and that's when they got domestic violence into the Neighborhood Watch program. So when the yelling and screaming starts, the neighbors, the lights start going on, porch lights start going on, police get called. Instead of one 911 call, they get like 10 911 calls now. And, you know, it's everybody getting involved, everybody working together, your whole neighborhood. If you don't want to be that person to make that call, make somebody in charge. You know, like perhaps your next door neighbor, if you don't want to be the one to call the police, you tell your next door neighbor, okay, you can be in charge. If you don't mind making all the phone calls, you can be in charge and you can call everybody. You know, call the police, call the shelters, call, you know, the people that are necessary to call. And then as a group, they go over to the victim and just to let her know that they're there to help her. Yeah. And then they go to the abuser and just say, hey, we're not going to put up with this. We don't want this.
Let's talk about the Hands Are Not for Hitting program. What is this program that you speak out on behalf on? How did it get its start, and what is it basically geared towards?
Well, the Hands Are Not for Hitting is from the Minnesota Coalition for Battered Women. They started the program. And it's geared towards children kindergarten through the 6th grade. It's a program, it's a real simple program. They have a curriculum for kindergarten through 3rd grade, 4th through 6th grade. What they do is they have a child to work on the curriculum and then also just place his hand on a piece of paper, trace the outline of his hand or her hand, color whatever colors they want, write sayings on it, and they take a pledge. Hands are not for hitting, my hand will not commit violence. And it's that simple. And you know, it's kind of amazing because you learn a lot from them, because in other programs, whenever other schools have done it, what they've seen on the hands are, please stop hitting me. Or, you know, if you want to get something, you have to be hit. You know, so you can really learn a lot from where the children are coming from through just those little sayings and that kind of writing, or how they color the hand. So
You can tell by, you know, how they...
yeah, if they're real bright colors,
Yeah.
you think, oh God, okay, well this is, I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
I'm really not sure, but I
Yeah.
called up the psychiatrist and I asked him, I said, okay, what do all these colors mean?
Yeah.
And he says, well, if they're really bright colors, it means you have a very happy child. If you've got really dark, like blacks and browns and really, you know, muddy colors and things, and very jagged kind of coloring, then you have a very sad, angry child.
Yeah.
You know, dependent.
Do you feel that children are afraid to tell of their abuse that are happening to them or to their parents? And do you have like something that you could say to maybe help them?
Well, I just know that children who are in violent homes, they have to learn the other side. So I think it's really important to have these programs in the schools. If a child is in a home where mom and dad are fighting all the time, that's all he's going to know. That's all he's going to see. He's going to think, okay, well, this is the way, you know, my best friend lives. This is the way you live, and that's okay because that's the way everybody lives, unless they see the other side of it. So if they go to school and they have a program like Hands Are Not for Hitting, then they're going to learn, okay, hands are for shaking hands are for playing an instrument, hands are for, you know, a nice hug, you know, just the good things that hands are for. because they need to be taught that, because all they're doing is seeing the bad stuff.
Okay.
So they need to learn it. It's a learned behavior, domestic violence.
A quick question, turning to the kids of Nicole and OJ. Did they ever witness any of the abuse?
You know what? I usually don't talk about them.
Okay.
It's not an issue. It's too close to home.
Okay.
You know, so I don't talk about her because I really didn't learn anything from her except for her notes. I couldn't ask her, you know, any kind of questions. And I don't want to bring that part of, you know, that part of their life into Sydney and Justin's life now. You know, they've been hurt enough, so I don't even ask them.
Well, what would you like to see changed in the justice system for abusers?
Oh, what would I like to see changed? Well, there's a lot that's already changed. I mean, they've got quite a few bills out in California. I don't know what your domestic violence laws are here in Pennsylvania, but I know that in California we've gotten a couple of bills passed that state that the safety, protection, and well-being of a child supersedes everything. You know, so if a father is violent to a child, that parent will no longer have to be that parent. That came into effect last January. A little late for our case, but I mean, it did come into effect, and it is helping other children. There's also laws such as Senator Lautenberg's law, which is if you've been charged with a domestic violence misdemeanor, you're not allowed to carry a gun, which is a very good law, I think, because I mean, if you're violent and you have that kind of a temper, I mean, who's to say that you're not going to pick up that gun and use it?
Yeah.
You know, if it's sitting there. So there's been a lot of good changes. The police department's getting a lot more active. People just need to be educated on it. I mean, just like I did.
Yeah.
You know, everybody needs to be educated, no matter if you're a judge, if you're a lawyer, if you're a police officer, nurse. I mean, there's a lot of places, you know, the police, they go into situations. Before, they were very, you know, I think very like nothing. You know, it's a family problem. You know, it's a family problem, and that's where everybody was. It's a family problem, and nobody wanted to talk about it. But you know what? If you don't make it your problem, somebody could end up dead. You know, and that's why I think I get out there and I speak, because now it is my problem, so that something like this doesn't happen to someone else's family.
What would you say to women who are in the abusive relationships? What advice would you give to them at this point?
Well, I think that if you're in a controlling relationship right now, it usually escalates. And I think you don't deserve it, you know, because a lot of the victims, they have a very low self-esteem. You get into this controlling relationship because you don't feel like you are worth anything. You don't feel like you're any good. You know, so if somebody needs to control you and says, hey, you can't go and mail the letter right over here. You can't go over there by yourself because I don't, you know, who knows what the case may be. It's like, oh, I want to protect you, somebody else may hurt you, or God knows what. But when those things start happening too much, don't answer your phone, you know, I want to protect you from the outside world, don't answer the door. I mean, there's so many different little tiny things that could happen to you that you're like, wait a minute, red flag. You got to watch out, because you don't need to be in a controlling relationship. What you got to remember is that you're okay, and that you are worth it, and that you should respect yourself, and other people should respect you as well, for being an individual, for being a person.
Yeah.
Okay, you just mentioned about the relationships. Why do you feel that the people are so dominating in the relationships that somebody has to control it and then abuse them?
Insecurity. Abusers are very insecure people. If you have to control a woman, or even I mean, somebody, we won't even get into the man-woman, okay, because there's a lot of gay and lesbian relationships that are very abusive. But there's that one person that's more dominating. And it's because they have to, you know, have that thumb over you. Did you guys ever hear that expression?
Yeah.
Having a thumb on top of you and you can't do anything else except when I tell you you can.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that? Well, I guess I'm older than you are. I'm older than you. But you know, it's that kind of a thing. It's that kind of a feeling where you just say, well, wait a minute. Those are like little red flags where you just say, I can be my own person, and you know what? Don't talk to me like that. If they start talking to you, you know, like, why are you wearing that? Why are you wearing that tie? You know, why do you wear your hair like that? You know, it's stuff like that. It's just little itty bitty things that people have to be aware of.
Even like money and like
financial
jealousy.
is a big thing.
Yeah, and like even...
Well, see, I think if you're jealous of somebody, maybe a little bit of jealousy is healthy, you know, because you care about the person.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
I think if jealousy goes too far, I think it's destructive. And I remember when I was a teenager, a friend of mine, he told me, he says, Denise, jealousy kills. And I didn't understand what he meant by that because I was very young. I was in my early 20s. And I said, well, God, okay, jealousy kills, fine. I don't really understand it. But you know what? There's books written now on jealousy and how dangerous, if you're really a jealous person, and how dangerous a situation can be for you or for your partner. Yeah. So now I understand what he means by jealousy kills.
Yeah.
You know? I think people, what you have to understand is that people should respect you. And who you are is wonderful, and girls have to believe that. I think a lot of times the girls, they feel like they're no good, and they have to say, well, wait a minute, I am okay. I am this way, and I am good. And, you know, just believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Believe.
So
I think it's
high
really important.
self-esteem can...
Oh, because they lower your self-esteem. They try and just chip it away, you know, little by little.
I mean, you could have, like, high self-esteem, and they can be...
And they can rip it
They
apart.
can still rip you apart.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know what, just remember that you're okay and that you just demand respect. That's all it is. I mean, it's real simple.
Yeah.
Communicate, demand respect. To say, I want to be treated nicely.
Yes.
It's very simple, and you know what, it's not that hard. Because if you treat somebody nice, they're going to treat you nice.
Yes. Okay. That was covered a lot. When All Things Considered returns, we will elaborate more on this issue and discuss the cycle of violence. Stay tuned.
Swallow it down, check it. It feels so good, spinning in your stomach. Wait until
You know trouble can start when the clock hits 3. When there's no place after school for kids to be, nothing to do but hang it on city streets. When mom and dad are working to make ends meet, now it's time to beat the street.
With after-school programs, city kids aren't left alone in adulthood. They keep on learning between 3 and 6, but these programs need your support. Join with the Urban League to keep them going. Call now, because it's
Time to beat the street.
An angry man takes to the street again to take it back from pushers and gangs and make it safe for his 4-year-old. Whose side are you on? An after-school program that develops children's artistic skills is about to lose its funding. Possibly again. Whose side are you on? A mother works 2 jobs so she can raise her kids in a decent neighborhood. Now she must face the new guy on the block, the one dealing drugs. Whose side are you on? A battle is raging. Parents all across America are struggling to protect their children. Call us. We know hundreds of ways you can take their side and help. We're fighting for the children. Whose side are you on?
And we're back. Joining me now this evening is Sean Carr, our panelist, filling in for Hope Guy, who is on assignment this week, and Lori Snyder-Yount, director of the program SAFE here in Clarion. Lori, can you define for us, or what does SAFE stand for?
It stands for Stop Abuse for Everyone.
Ah, okay. Denise mentioned about the cycle of violence. Can you explain to us what the cycle of violence is?
Yeah, Denise, I feel, did a very good job explaining it. Basically, with the cycle of abuse or the cycle of violence, what we see is a tension-building stage where, as Denise referred to, the victim feels as if she's walking on eggshells. Next comes a battering incident or a physically abusive incident, and then after that, the honeymoon phase.
Okay, well, what are some types of abuse?
We, at SAFE, we identify basically 5 different types of abuse. Emotional and psychological abuse, which is name-calling, put-downs, some of the things that Denise described. Physical abuse, which most people are familiar with, anything from pulling hair, spitting, unwanted touching, all the way up to being assaulted with guns. There's a sexual abuse, which includes obviously rape in marriage, but also prostitution, withholding sex. Oftentimes the victim is forced to perform humiliating sexual acts. Financial abuse, which is withholding money or not giving the victim money for necessities. Also forcing her to work or not to work and not letting her have any control in that. And the last kind of abuse that we typically identify that most people don't think of as abuse is destruction of property and pets. This can be very, very threatening. This can be where the abuser basically destroys the things that are most precious to the victims to again gain control over her.
Yeah. Sean, from a student standpoint, what do you think causes the act of violence, domestic violence?
Well, I think from a student standpoint, it goes back to the relationships that you have at home, because a lot of students come here with a boyfriend at home or a girlfriend at home, and a lot of times I see the boyfriend or girlfriend really pushy about certain things, like you can't have friends up here that are of the other sex, and certain things like that. It goes back to, you know, just insecurity about your relationship, which is what Denise said.
Okay.
And that's pretty much generally where you see it from the student standpoint.
Okay. Well, Lori, as an expert, what do you think causes domestic violence?
I think domestic violence is about issues of power and control. It's not about issues of losing one's temper or drinking or substance abuse, although all those things kind of come into the mix. When you get right down to it, domestic violence is about power and control. It's about one person believing that they have the right to have power and control over another person.
Well, what are some of the signs of abuse?
Some of the real typical obvious signs would be a black eye, bruises in unexplained places. A lot of times as an abusive relationship goes on, abusers get smarter, I guess is the best way to put it. And an abuser will realize that if the victim goes into the workplace or even goes to the store with a black eye or something like that, she's going to be questioned. So a lot of times we see bruises on backs, on chest areas, backs of the legs, places where you don't obviously show. Isolation is another real significant aspect. If you're dealing with someone who's very isolated and has to account for her time, account for all of her time, that's a real significant warning sign in domestic violence.
Well, what can you say are some of the characteristics of an abuser?
Abusers typically have very low self-esteem. They are very insecure, as I believe Denise alluded to. Oftentimes they do abuse alcohol or other substances, although that's not always the case. Abusers are extremely, extremely jealous and extremely possessive, taken to the extreme, and basically feel that they have the right to control someone else.
Sean, have you ever witnessed any of these signs?
Again,
Which ones?
Again, just with the people that I see around, any of the verbal abuse, I think, would be the big one. Verbally, just from the boyfriend point of view or the girlfriend point of view, you know, just saying you cannot have any friends up at school that are another guy or another girl. That's usually the only visible sign. A lot of other signs, again, like Denise said, you can't really see.
Can't
so
really tell.
yeah, unless you're really close with that person.
Yeah.
But I mean, the signs I see are the verbal abuse on the person.
Verbal, yeah. Would you say verbal is, even in society, can you witness some of this in society too?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think if you go into any high school or even into the grocery store, supermarket, or even, you know, I know in personal experiences sitting around with a group of friends, it's probably because of the type of work that I do, but I'm very aware of controlling statements and put downs and things like that. That just goes on all the time.
All the time, wow. Can you share with us a personal experience in which some of these signs were hidden, not evident?
One woman's story comes to mind, and she has given the agency permission to speak about her story. I can't give her name to protect her confidentiality. But basically, she was involved in an abusive relationship for a number of years with someone who was very well respected in the community. She has an extremely supportive family, and her family always felt that she would come to them if ever anything happened. In talking to this woman, however, she didn't want to go to her family because she felt that her abuser, her boyfriend, was going to change, and she didn't want her family to hold it against him when he finally did change. He didn't change, and she ended up having part of her arm shot off and still has a bullet lodged in her hip. And the case is going through the criminal justice system now. But in talking with her family also, a lot of their questions were, Why didn't she ever tell us? We were supportive of her. She knows that we are supportive of her. And it really came back to her believing that she could change him. And you can't change someone else's actions. And it's a very sad case. Luckily, she is still alive, and she's still alive to talk about it.
Wow. Well, can you explain to us, Lori, what the honeymoon phase is and what happens during that?
During the honeymoon phase, Denise again described it very well, I feel. It's when the abusive person comes back and is all full of apologies, and I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. One thing that we hear a lot of is, I promise I'll go to counseling, things like that.
Counseling would be
Yes.
a good thing
Yes.
to go to. If
Yes.
You, okay. Well, right now, Sean, we're going to go to a break right now, and we'll return right after this.
You cry, you laugh, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn.
Here's my nephew Scruff, about to run into trouble again.
Hey, Bobo, where's your video game?
In here. Oh, look at this. Uh-oh. It's my dad. Someone want to hold him?
I do.
You'll see, but that's not the only problem he has.
Hey, here's a shortcut.
Not down there, Square.
I don't think it's safe. Come on, coast is clear.
I'm not taking a chance, Lance. Oh, no.
Well, hello, dog face. Come and give us your sneakers.
Uh-oh, trouble again, Scruff. What are you going to do now?
I don't know.
If you get my new comic activity book, More Adventures with Scruff, you'll find out what you can do about bullies, drunks, and guns.
Am I the hero again?
You'll see. And you'll see lots of games.
Cool.
For your free copy of my new comic activity book, write Scruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652. Scruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652. And you'll be helping take a bite out of crime.
I want it, I want it.
Well, right before the break, we were talking about the honeymoon phase, and let's continue on the honeymoon phase. How much time elapses between the honeymoon phase and like the next act of violence?
Each individual relationship is very, very different. The one thing that is true through the majority of relationships is that the violence will escalate, and the amount of time that it takes to go through the cycle of abuse or go from the honeymoon stage to the next battering incident will decrease as time goes on if there's no intervention in the relationship. I've seen relationships that go through the entire cycle of abuse from the tension building all the way to the honeymoon phase in a matter of a day or two. And I've also been witness to relationships where it may take a year or more. So that really varies with each individual relationship. The pattern is always there, and the other certainty is that it will continue to escalate. The violence will continue to get worse unless there's some type of intervention.
So the way, like the process of it, is it, you said it like tension builder?
The tension building,
and then
the
it like it's in the honeymoon, and then it'll go back to the tension?
It goes tension building to the battering incident, back to the honeymoon phase, and then back into the tension building stage. What basically happens is that the abuser will, during the honeymoon phase, like make all kinds of promises. I alluded before the break to the abuser saying, well, I'll go to counseling, you know, in order to get back in the home, in order to get back with the person he's involved with. Typically what we see is that they may go to counseling 1 or 2 times, and then that's it, because the abuser may feel that everything's fixed, or it really is all her problem. So the promises aren't followed through with, basically, and the tension starts building again, and the battering incident occurs.
Yeah. Well, what are the stages when a victim of domestic violence enters the SAFE program?
Typically, our first contact with a victim is through our hotline, which is staffed 24 hours a day by trained staff or trained volunteers, and can be accessed any time of the day or night by calling 226-SAFE or by calling 911. Typically, that's our first contact with a victim. The volunteer or the staff who takes the phone call will assess the immediate situation, make sure that the victim, if she needs emergency medical treatment, gets to a hospital. If she's requesting shelter, we'll try to get her to a safe location, basically meet the immediate needs. That hotline phone call is typically followed up by a face-to-face office visit where, again, trained staff or volunteers assess basically what the woman wants done. We feel very strongly that we need to do what it is that she wants us to do for her as much as possible.
And that number's free day and night?
It's right. It's free. All of our services are free and confidential. There's no charge for any of our services.
Why do so many people go back to these relationships in which they're being abused in?
A lot of it is that they still love their partner. As difficult as that is to understand, they really do love their partner. A lot of it is the children. A lot of it is not having financial support. A lot of the women that we deal with are in their 50s and may not have ever worked in their life. And for them to leave a financially secure home and face the prospect of possibly being on public assistance with their, with whatever children they have left in the home is very scary.
Yes.
A lot of times, we had one woman just very recently who had a lot of support from her church until she left, and then all the support's gone. So all that support really needs to be in place.
Yes. Well, Sean, do you think domestic abuse is on the rise, and why?
I don't know if I can honestly say if I know it's on the rise.
Just from your standpoint.
From my standpoint, I see, just as we mature, I guess it will be in the fact that children are growing up faster and this sort of thing's happening to younger and younger people. But as far as it's on the rise, it pretty much it seems to be the same as it was.
Yeah. Well, Lori, what do you think? Do you think domestic violence is on the rise? And why?
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily on the rise. I think it's always been there. I think people are becoming more aware and people are talking about it more. People are becoming less tolerant. Two real significant trends that I see are that the faces we're seeing are getting much, much younger. We're seeing a lot more college students coming and requesting our services, and the violence is getting much more scary, much more deadly. When I came to SAFE 6 years ago, while we saw guns used in abuse and we saw knives threatened and weapons used, it was not a weekly occurrence. Now it's to the point where it's not anything unusual to have a woman come in and say she was threatened with a gun or a knife, or to have women actually shot at. So I think the lethality is getting worse and the faces are getting younger.
Sean, where do you think majority of domestic violence occurs? And why?
I'd say in the home, pretty much.
In the home?
Away from the public view, from, I guess, my experience or my opinion, because people who abuse their spouse, their significant other, really, I don't think they want other people to know about it. It's more of a secretive thing. And then when they're in front of people, they're, I love you and you're the best. But I think behind the curtain, that's when their true colors comes out. Where Denise said that she didn't know until after the death. It would have been obvious to her had he been obvious about it. And I think that's how it is in almost every case.
Well, when we return, we will take a look at ways of preventing domestic violence anywhere and where you can seek help. When All Things Considered returns, stay tuned.
I certainly do. I recommend sticking your foot in your mouth at any time.
Hi, I'm Jamie Sakaris, host here on All Things Considered. We here at All Things Considered are proud to bring the rating system here to TV5. All Things Considered is a program geared towards the community, and in doing so, we feel that by rating our shows, we are providing parents with the opportunity to screen what their children watch. The majority of our shows will be rated TV-PG, meaning our shows will deal with content that is above the average of 10 years old. In the event of a more mature show, we have adopted the TV-14 rating. This rating means no children under the age of 14 should watch. ATC is committed to community programming, and in doing so, we will present the rating system at the beginning of each show.
Pizza.
Honey, please don't be so loud. Please don't. Let go of me!
Get in the kitchen!
No!
Do you want to see what hurts? That's what hurts! That's what hurts!
Oh, please! I can't. Please.
For information, call 1-800-END-ABUSE.
And we're back. Lori, how can one avoid entering into an abusive relationship?
I think knowing yourself, respecting yourself, communicating your boundaries very clearly to your partner, refusing to be isolated. I think that abusive relationships happen without people really realizing that it's happening to them. So when you do become aware, being involved in an abusive relationship is not something to be ashamed about. It's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to confide in a friend. It's okay to tell somebody. That's the only way that it's going to end, that you're going to get some help.
Sean, from a student standpoint, what do you feel is the best method of prevention in domestic violence?
I think it's a simple prevention method, but it's complicated in itself. Education is always the key to every problem. Education.
That's a good
A
one.
lot of these kids at home see their parents, some of their parents doing this, and they learn that, and you know, you need teachers and you know, people older than them just kind of to show them the right way, you know, show them that you have to love without hitting, without hurting, you know. It all comes down to education.
Education.
Yes, I believe.
That's right. Okay, well, Lori, what do you think is the best prevention in domestic violence?
Sean took my answer. Yes. No, that's quite all right. No, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with what Sean said, and I couldn't say it better. I think education is the absolute best means. To that end, we have a full-time outreach coordinator who spends the majority of her time in elementary schools throughout the county doing curriculums that are designed to build self-esteem and deal with conflict resolution in a nonviolent way. I think that, coupled with a zero community tolerance, also in our community going on, today we had the first meeting for the Violence Against Women Task Force, which involves the district attorney, chiefs of police, the Rape Crisis Center, several different agencies in the county. And I think that's a real important part, but I think bottom line is you have to start educating children that this is not acceptable, that this is just not acceptable activity, and that's the only way we're going to see things change. So I'm glad you have that answer too.
I appreciate that.
That's good. Well, how does domestic violence affect the family in whole?
A lot of times, people who are involved in abusive relationships feel that if their children don't witness the actual hitting, don't witness the actual punching, that the children are not being affected. We also run a children's group at SAFE, and the children hear things. The children see things more than the parents know. The children come to us with a lot of trust issues. The children come to us with anger issues, acting out. They see modeled by the adults in their life that hitting is a real good way to get your own way. Hitting is an okay way to solve problems. So we try to work with them to unlearn all of that and teach them that, you know, as Denise said, hands are not for hitting. Kids are the silent victims. Oftentimes, children who are raised in abusive homes will go on to repeat the cycle either by becoming abusive themselves or by marrying or becoming partners with an abuser. People live what they learn, and if you learn it early on, you're more likely to repeat that cycle.
Well, what if you know someone, what can you do that is in an abusive relationship? What can they do?
What you can do as a friend is listen and believe and be supportive. That is the most important thing. As a general rule, we see women leave a relationship 7 to 8 times before they finally leave for good. Leaving is a process, and there needs to be an awful lot of support in that process. If a woman leaves and then chooses to go back, we have to support that decision because she's still a little bit stronger. We cannot minimize what's happening to her. We need to believe her voice and not look at it that, well, this is this really nice guy that sits next to me in psych class. How can he be beating you up?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. We have to believe that people don't make this stuff up. It's too nasty and it's too scary. It's nothing to mess around with.
Yeah. Well, what should someone do if they are in a relationship? What's the first step that they should take?
They can call SAFE anytime, day or night, 226-SAFE or 911. Reach out, talk to someone. We get an awful lot of phone calls from parents and from friends asking for information for their children or for their friends. Talk to somebody. If you don't feel able or willing to come to us yourself, have a friend get information for you. And just keep talking about it. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we will conclude our discussion on domestic violence and give you a sneak preview of what is coming up on the next show when All Things Considered returns.
Who are you?
See more smoke. Smoke detector. And I see more smoke coming from that toaster.
Thanks for warning us, Seymour.
I hate smoke. So whenever I see it, I make this noise to warn you. Because where there's smoke, there may be fire.
Be cool about fire safety. Be cool.
Watch All Things Considered every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. here on TV5.
Tonight, we hope we provided you with a greater understanding of domestic violence and its effects. If someone is involved in a domestic violence relationship and is seeking help, you can dial 226-SAFE or 911. Coming up on our next show, we will have a wrap-up of our whole season. There is just one simple phrase to sum up domestic violence, and that is, there is no excuse for abuse. For Sean Carr and the entire ATC crew, I'm Jamie Sakaris. With All Things Considered, good night.